Hello, anatomy colleagues. My name is Dr. Kathleen Alsop, and I will be one of your co-discipline leads for anatomy in this first foundational year of medical school. And we are going to have a series of videos for the learning objectives. You can either read them in written form, or you can watch these videos with us as we talk through it. These first few videos are really going to focus a lot on the anatomy basics. And then we're going to move more into certain anatomical structures, particularly as we get further along in the blocks. So I am going to stop my own video and really focus in on these slides here. So we are starting with the most foundational of foundational, which is anatomical position and spatial relationship terms. Here is your learning objective slide. I highly suggest after viewing this session that you take some time afterwards to try to answer this learning objective in your own words. If you can do that easily, then you have this concept down. If not, I would re-engage with material before moving on to other videos because we'll use these terms pretty interchangeably. Okay, so anatomy is sometimes referred to as the language of medicine. You need to be aware of the location of anatomical structures as part of everyday discussions in patient care. So there has been a standardization of terminology in order to make sure that all members of a healthcare team really understand any written or verbal communication, irrespective to changes in a patient's position. So throughout our anatomy videos, you will also see certain topics highlighted in blue, either blue boxes like I have here, or sometimes with blue text. This is your indication that this is a clinical consideration regarding this anatomical structure or concept. So, obviously, there can be countless clinical considerations for any given structure, but we highlight some of the highest yield or foundational concepts in anatomy. So, further detail is often given in clinical lectures throughout the blocks. So, do pay attention to this blue text or the blue boxes. It gives you an idea of some of the key clinical considerations. All right, let's define anatomical position because most anatomical terms of spatial relationships are made with consideration of anatomical position. So this is a consistent position. It always comes back to anatomical position. So even if a person is lying face down or they're prone or on their back, supine or on their side, doing a headstand, it doesn't matter. You describe a structure as if it is in anatomical position. This allows you to relate any structure to another structure, irrespective of that patient's position. So, what is it? Well, this is a body position with a person standing upright, as you see here with this individual. Their head and toes are directed anteriorly or they're facing forward. And I want you to note here how the palms of the hands are also facing anteriorly or facing out, which we know is not a very natural position. We don't typically just naturally stand around with our palms facing forward. But this position allows for the bones of the forearm, so the radius and the ulna, to be parallel to one another. So that's part of anatomical position. The lower limbs should be close, as in they're not spread too far apart, and the feet should be parallel. So hopefully you can kind of get this image stuck in your mind of how this individual would be discussed when we're talking about anatomical position. As mentioned, many of the spatial relational terminology used in anatomy and medicine in general consider anatomical position. These are often described in pairs with opposite meanings. So a few major examples include superior and inferior. So superior refers to a structure that is nearer to the head, so the top of the head or the top of the skull. Sometimes you will hear the term cranial, which has a similar definition. It's a more traditional term. We tend to use superior, but you certainly will still hear cranial in other areas. Inferior means nearer to the feet. And sometimes, so even nearer to the feet, specifically the sole of the feet or the bottoms of the feet. Caudal is sometimes used interchangeably with inferior, which also means towards the feet, but it can also mean towards the tail region. So cauda actually means tail, which for humans is the coccyx. Inferior is most typically used in anatomy, while caudal is more commonly employed in embryology and neuroanatomy. So when using these terms, you can't just say the nose is superior. Well, superior to what? It would be correct to say that the nose is superior to the mouth, but it is actually inferior to the eyes. So remember, these are relational terms where something is in relation to another. All right, moving to medial and lateral. Medial describes a structure that is closer to the median plane. We will have a whole video on anatomical planes, but the median plane is a vertical plane that passes longitudinally through the midlines of the head, the neck, and the thorax. So it runs right down the midline. It splits the body into mostly symmetrical right and left halves. Lateral is going to describe a structure that is away from the median plane. So the ear is lateral to the eye, or in other words, the eye is medial to the ear. Anterior, or sometimes you hear the more traditional term ventral, means towards the front surface of the body, and posterior or dorsal means towards the back surface, again, with consideration of anatomical position. In neuroanatomy, specifically when talking about the brain, rostral is used instead of anterior. Rostral means towards the beak. All right. Now, some relational terms are not contingent or on considerations of anatomical position. Proximal and distal are examples of this. So proximal describes a structure that is closer to the trunk or the point of origin, while distal is away from the trunk or origin. These terms, proximal and distal, are most commonly used with the appendages or the upper and lower limbs. But it can also be used to say, or say for an arterial branch, which is closer or further away from its source. So not just within the appendages, but certainly where we hear this most often, particularly in the musculoskeletal portion of the course. We'll be talking quite a bit about that. Another example is superficial and deep, and sometimes we use the term intermediate if comparing more than two structures. So superficial, as you might imagine, is closer to the surface, whereas deep is farther from the surface. So skin is superficial to all organs. All right, excellent. We have made it to the end of this learning objective. For each video, we will have a summary slide, which highlights some of the highest yield concepts from the learning objective. This particular slide is an excellent resource for studying for your upcoming assessments, but it's also nice to save these slides for review later in your career too. So I highly recommend returning to these. All right, thank you for your attention, and please reach out if you have any questions.